Hi, I'm Effie. This is What Effie Reads, and I don't really have a snappy way of describing what this video is all about, but it's kind of me talking about self-destruct lists and why they don't really work for me and what I'm going to put in place instead. So, first off, it feels like a self-destruct list is fairly self-explanatory, but I think it's something that if you're in the bookish community, it makes complete sense, but outside of it, maybe not. So, very briefly, I'm pretty sure it's a concept that was established by Becca over at Becca and the Books. I could be wrong, but I feel like she's the original one. And essentially what you do is you pick out books from your shelves that you probably should unhaul, but you've been on the fence about unhauling for whatever reason. And then what you do is you say, these books will self-destruct in, and it's usually 12 months. I'm sure there are people that have made it different lengths of time, but 12 months is the normal thing. When I first joined BookTube, I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to do that. And I set myself a list and I joined in, I think it was March or April. So I was like, I'll give myself until the end of the year. And then at the end of the year, I don't think I'd read any of them. So I was like, okay, I'll give myself an extension, but I'll also add some more books onto the list. So that was my first group of these books will self-destruct in. And then at the start of this year, possibly the end of last year, I set myself another 12 books. However, this time around, I picked 6 for myself, and I had my best friend Shannon, whose channel is Head in the Books, to pick 6 for me. On both occasions of me doing these books will self-destruct in X amount of time, I found that it was actually really difficult for me to pick them up, just in the sense of it didn't matter that I'd put them on this list, I just wasn't prioritising. And I think that's part and parcel of the fact that for me, TBRs, I really want to have TBRs because it gives me structure and I thrive on structure. But me reading TBRs doesn't really work, which is why, as you might have noticed, my TBR game kind of fizzled out this year. So putting these books on this list just wasn't doing the intended. But another thing that I noticed, and I can't really speak about the first batch of books that I put on a self-destruct list because I don't really remember them that well. It was a year ago now. But for the books that I put on my list for 2023, the ones that I put on for myself, half of them I DNF'd anyway. And then I can't remember of the others which ones were the ones Shannon put on and which ones were the ones I put on. But essentially, I didn't love many of them. I think there was 1 or 2 on the list that it was more giving myself a push to read them. In fact, let me just run through the 12 that were on the list. Got my reading journal out. Okay, so the 12 books that I put on the list, and I'll say their fates now. So, Through Her Eyes by Sophie Fahy, read, hated it, unhauling. Little Woodford by Catherine Jones, DNF'd, unhauling. How Much of These Hills Is Gold by C. Pam Zhang, DNF'd, unhauling. Behind Closed Doors, read, it was fine, unhauling. Astrid Parker Doesn't Fail by Ashley Herring Blake, read, decent, I don't know, hard to say, but keeping that one. I Kiss Shara Wheeler by Casey McQuiston, read, hated, unhauling. The Prison Healer by Lynette Noni, unhauled without even attempting. The Unbroken by C.L. Clarke, DNF'd, unhauling. From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout, found it very mid, keeping it for now. This Savage Song by V. Schwab. Now I know for a fact this isn't a book I put on the list myself because I love Schwab's work, but at least I don't think I put it on the list myself. Loved, keeping. House of Hollow by Krystal Sutherland, loved, keeping. Letters to the Lost by Brigid Kemmerer, loved keeping. And again, I'm fairly sure that Letters to the Lost was not a book I put on the list myself. So I think there's a fair chance House of Hollow was also not a book I put on the list myself. So of the three that I loved, none of them I put on the list myself. Pretty sure Astrid Parker, Shannon put on the list for me. So again, that's 4 of the ones I had positive feelings about that I didn't pick for myself. So for the purpose of me discussing self-destruct lists, is kind of moot. So being realistic with myself, I don't think a self-destruct list works for me. One, because I just don't prioritise the books. It doesn't matter that I've put a time restraint on myself. I'm just not prioritising them. And then 2, I find that the books that I end up putting on my list are books that I should just unhaul anyway. Like, there's going to be the odd book that takes me by surprise and I didn't expect to love, but I do. But generally, I feel like I have a pretty good idea of my own reading taste now. So putting books on these books will self-destruct in X amount of time list is kind of delaying the inevitable. So the question is, what am I doing now? And I think the answer is these shelves here. I'm not going to put a time limit on it because, as established, time limits don't work for me. But I have just done a massive unhaul with my shelves recently. So I've culled the ones that I'm not interested in. But the books on the front, ignore the back of the shelves because on the back is my red books and they are alphabetically organised. But the books on the front and these 4 shelves, so this one, this one, this one and this one, are books that I received in subscription boxes. And essentially I've gone through the numbers and I've read roughly 25% of the books that I have received in subscription boxes. I've unhauled roughly 25%, some of them unhauling without even reading them. I am getting better at skipping though. And the remaining 50% of books I've received in subscription boxes, I have not read. There is a mixture of Goldsborough Premium, Goldsborough Science Fiction and Fantasy Fellowship, Fairly Adult, Fairly YA, Illumicrate, Evernight, Afterlight, Poetry by Post Fiction, Poetry by Post Non-Fiction, Queer Book Box and Litjoy. I think that's all of them on here. I have been realistic and I do not subscribe to all of them right now. I do have a number of active subscriptions, but as I say, I'm trying to be better with using my skips, especially subscriptions that have quite a generous skip policy, because it enables me to be really realistic about what books I do and don't want to receive. So I think realistically, there's near enough 100 books, I think, here. I think it's 84 books. I'm missing 1 book from the shelves, but I think there's 84 books across these 4 shelves. So trying to read them all in the next year is just not realistic. But I would like to at least have had a taste of some of them. I think saying that if I can get through a further 25% of them, that would be great. It would be nice if by the end of next year, my unread ratio is a lot lower. So maybe saying that only 25% of them I haven't read. I mean, I'm not going to put limitations on myself because I know that it doesn't work for me. But I definitely want to be doing more trier chapters, getting a feel for the books overall. And one of the things I want to do in a much less structured way than I've seen other creators do, and possibly I won't even make much, if any, content around this, but I want to be looking at the subscriptions these books came from and going, do the books that come in this subscription fit my taste? Now, one of the subscriptions that there's at least 4 of the subscriptions that I had at one point that I've 5 that I had at one point that I've cancelled. But one of the big ones for me was Premiere by Goldsborough. Annoyingly, their January to March picks look amazing, but I just can't rationalise paying £30 for each of their books, even if they are gorgeous. And also, I know from experience that their picks don't really hit for me, or at least I'm not sure if I've actually read any books that I got in Goldsborough Premier, which is an issue. But overall, I want to see if the books that I have received from them and haven't picked up yet are books that I'm going to want. I hope that all makes sense. I would love to hear from you about your experiences with book boxes, and if you actually think they are something that's worth the money, because obviously you do pay a premium. And something that I've noticed with some of the subscription boxes is they're putting in books that are available as paperback normally, so they're doing a hardback edition and that's exclusive to the book box. But for me, I don't really pick one over the other. Like, I probably buy more paperbacks just because it's cheaper to buy a paperback, but I don't have much of a preference for format, so it's not worth paying the premium for me to get a hardback of a book I can get as a paperback. I hope you will join me on this journey of me trying to go through all of my unread subscription box books. Maybe consider subscribing if you would like to follow this journey and see my thoughts on these books, because I know I've got some very beloved books on these shelves that I still haven't read. But until tomorrow, love you. Bye.